This is Andru Volinsky, the Executive Counselor for District 2, reporting to you about today's Executive Council meeting. Our meeting was delayed till 1:30 because the governor had a memorial service this morning to attend, so we accommodated him. I think there are a couple of big takeaways from today's council meeting, mostly around the education issues related to reopening. Frank Edeblut, the Education Commissioner, attended our council meeting. The council meetings are held by phone during these COVID pandemic times. And I asked him, you had a START committee that you put in place for 8 or 10 weeks, meeting after meeting after meeting. Did they get to see and approve the 50-page guidance document that Governor Sununu issued yesterday, a document that actually doesn't provide much guidance and is mostly a political document? And it took me 10 minutes of questioning to get a straight answer from our education commissioner. And it is the kind of thing that you could listen to and understand why the man wouldn't answer the question. The ultimate answer is the START committee did not review this guidance document. It was never presented back to them. They put together a 2 or 3 page top level 10-item skeletal outline of some issues. And then Frank Edeblut took those and used a consulting firm that Betsy DeVos' U.S. Department of Education put in place. It's called AIR. Finally, after 10 minutes of questioning him on this single point over and over, asking the same question, pushing him hard, Edeblut finally admitted that the guidance document was written by the DeVos consulting firm and his office. That's where this comes from. That's why it's such a political document. And then Chris Sununu was asked some questions towards the end of our meeting by Deborah Pignatelli, who's the counselor for the Nashua area, about whether we had enough money coming through to support schools in their reopening. And to show you how shallow his understanding is, he said there's plenty of money for masks and hand lotion, hand sanitizer. Really, the big issue here is New Hampshire hasn't had building aid since 2008. God knows what shape the air exchange systems are in our schools. There are 488 school buildings in our state, some of them 100 years old. There's a well-defined engineering standard that requires the air to be exchanged 2.5 times every hour in a classroom. Do we know where that's happening? The governor doesn't even understand that that's an issue. He's focused on hand sanitizer and face masks, which he says should be optional. I raised the question with the governor, what about communities that are next to each other? Or as in my hometown of Concord, some kids from Concord go to the Concord schools and some kids go to the Merrimack Valley School District. What if they take opposite positions on face masks? Doesn't one undermine the other? Basically, the governor's answer was they have to work it out. Well, of course they have to work it out, but wouldn't this all work a little better if there were more direct guidance from the state education agency, the Department of Education? That's what should have happened in this guidance document. Instead, it's the Betsy DeVos political approach of not taking any positions and demeaning the role of the CDC as she did on the lecture circuit last weekend. It's a disappointing effort that comes very late in the process. The other thing the governor didn't think of is we're going to have children on school buses that need to be supervised. School bus driver can't do that. That means we have to hire additional monitors. We're going to have teachers who are in classroom teaching while other teachers need to do this hybrid remote learning. that means additional expense to school districts and renegotiation of teacher wages. Governor didn't think about that. There are all kinds of issues related to reopening that just aren't on the governor's radar screen. His understanding of the issue is really, really limited. And Frank Edeblut and the Betsy DeVos consulting firm took advantage of that. So that was the big takeaway from today's council meeting. There were a couple of other issues that came up. Michael Todd was approved as someone who's reappointed to the Department of Safety. I used that as an opportunity to raise the question that many new Americans and green card holders find it difficult to come to the Concord DMV office to get their driver's license. It's different for them than anyone else. People who live in distant parts of the state generally can go and get their licenses at their local DMV office. It's different for new Americans. I don't quite understand why that is, and I've asked for the Department of Safety to respond further to me. Two other quick issues. I received a number of reports last week that there are portions of the men's prison during the warm days where it's 80 and 90 outside, where the cells are over 100 degrees. And I asked the Director of Administration for the Department of Corrections to report back to us on what the status is and what they're going to do about it. There is one other issue that I wanted to mention because I raised it at the top of the meeting. And this is a point, again, where leadership is important. I'm hearing from experts that the COVID vaccine probably comes out late winter and probably requires 2 administrations a month apart to be effective. So someone has to be in charge of planning all the logistics that go into getting the equipment, arranging for the spaces, doing the scheduling, arranging for personnel, all of that, very complicated logistics. I asked the governor and Commissioner Shibonet, who's going to be in charge of this? Have you assigned a point person to begin coordinating? Because it'll take months to do. The short response is no one's in charge. So I didn't want to panic anyone. I asked that they report back to us in August with a plan so that we can understand and see that the governor and the commissioner are on top of this. It doesn't do us any good to say the commissioner's in charge. She's in charge of the whole department with many different responsibilities. She happens to have a deep expertise with nursing homes. And that's why it was so surprising to see us fail so terribly with respect to keeping residents of nursing homes safe during the COVID crisis. And that's because she has a lot of other responsibilities to keep track of. So I'm not faulting her for not being on top of a particular situation. I am faulting the commissioner and the governor for not having thought ahead enough to assign someone to begin to coordinate what may be a Herculean effort to get people vaccinated. Last point I'll make is one of the items that was given to us as an informational item, kind of in passing, mentioned we're getting extra money from the federal government because our Medicaid population has grown. It's worth noting that because of the pandemic, the number of people on Medicaid has grown from 43,000 to about 105,000 New Hampshire citizens on Medicaid, more than doubled. So that tells you something about the impact. And going into the crisis, we had another 70,000 or so that were uninsured, not eligible for Medicaid or not on Medicaid. So we have some people struggling. In order to be eligible for expanded Medicaid, you have to meet income guidelines. And this is one indicator that shows me that people are struggling and we need to be aware of it. So thank you for listening to this brief update. If you have questions, You can reach us at volinskynh.com. I hope you stay safe, and I hope you vote by mail for the September 8th primary. Thank you so much. Take care.